Hello and thank you so much for joining me today. Today I'm sharing with you a small mixed media altered journal that I created using my mystery box from the Mixed Media Place. This box is filled with goodies, but you never know what you're going to get until you open the box. When I opened my box, you can see I found a StazOn ink, some mechanical titles, the journal itself, which is, you can see, smaller than 5.5 by 5.5, so it's a tiny one, some beautiful tissue paper full of wildlife, and you can see the size of the pictures here I'm showing you in comparison to my hand. A stamp set with some beautiful quotes, some dragonflies, and this gorgeous butterfly. This transfer sheet from AB Studio. And 4 coordinating metallic paints. You can see I'm going through them here. So I started by taking my journal apart, because I had an idea that I wanted to do a couple things with the pages, because there's so many pages in this journal. There's, I believe, 24 pages. So I wanted to make some pockets. So I'm taking them out and I'm counting how many sheets I'm going to need to make my pockets. So I decided I was going to adhere some of the tissue paper on the pages that I'm making pockets of. And I do this off camera somewhat because I kind of got out of frame, so I apologize a little bit. But you can see I'm just taking some gel medium and I'm adhering the tissue paper to one side of each of the pages, and then I'm going to cut the pages diagonally, and then I'm going to stitch them together on my sewing machine. And I made 4 pockets for this album, and you'll see them at the end of the flip through. But you can see that I'm just adhering this, drying it, and as the gel medium dries, it flattens out the page. I'm trimming, and I repeat this process 8 times. But I don't do it on camera because there's no reason for you to see it, and because I got totally out of focus. Because it's a big tissue paper and a little tiny page. So I'm going to continue that process, and again I go off camera because the machine, and it was just not possible. Anyhow, moving on. So now I'm applying gesso to my covers. And this is because I want the tissue paper to be brighter than it was in the pockets, because it's the brown cardboard. I just want to make sure to brighten it up a little bit before I adhere my tissue paper. So you can see that I'm just adding a quick coat of gesso, and I'm sorry, I did speed this up as much as I could, but you know, sometimes you got to know the basics, and this was an important step because it does change the look of the tissue paper with the color of the background that you're adhering it to. And sometimes people just don't think of that. So now you can see that I'm applying my soft gloss gel to my cover, and I'm going to pick which part of the tissue paper I wanted to be on my cover. And I stuck with these beautiful flowers because, you know, I'm a sucker for flowers and I just couldn't help myself. And I'm going to try to wrap this cover kind of like a Christmas present, and I'm just trying to cover the bottom diagonal of the pocket. And I know this is kind of tedious and I get a little out of focus, but I wanted you to see what I was doing for the pocket. So I'm just using a little bit of soft gloss gel, and I'm kind of folding and cutting and moving back and forth till I get it right. And I sped this up quite a bit, but I hadn't done this before, so it was just kind of a learning curve for me. So it did take a little bit of time because I'm not a big tissue paper person. I usually use it just for texture, so having it in the background like this was a little bit different for me. I'm continuing to adhere it with soft gloss gel just wherever I think that it's not going to stay in place, which I'm sure would be fine, but you know, I'm a glue addict and I couldn't help myself. Moving on to the back, and this one is a little bit different because it has that elastic banding to keep for the closure. So I just had to cut around that strategically and adhere with the gel. And you'll see me do that here. I really like the blue print in this tissue paper on a side note. It's much brighter and it lightens it up quite a bit. Because when I initially opened the tissue paper, I was like, wow, this is dark. But actually once it was on a white background and with the blue, it really is very beautiful. So you can see I'm continuing to add the gel medium, tucking and twisting and trying to get it into place. trying to make sure that my flower is the one that's going to be my focal point, which gets covered up mainly at the end a little bit with this paint here. And I'm adding color very sporadically, so you're going to see me just pull out all 4 of my colors and make little piles of paint. And then I'm going to take a mix of a spatula and a credit card, and I'm just going to add paint to the surface. There's no rhyme, there's no reason. I'm just adding color wherever I feel like adding color, wherever it makes me happy. The one thing I'm trying to do is I'm trying to make it a very thin coat, so you can still see the tissue paper underneath, and you can see when I'm blending it with my finger, I'm making sure that you can still see the pattern of the tissue paper. So I'm going to continue this process, adding some texture with the card, dragging it a little bit to thin it out, and I'm just using all 4 of the colors, covering the sides. And I get a little off camera when I'm doing that, but that's because I'm trying to make sure that it's on the edge of the cover as well. And now the back, and I'm going to repeat the same process. And it's just random. There's no reason for this. There's no specific place. It doesn't have a rule. There's no rule of 3 I have to follow. There's no anything. It's just wherever I place the paint, and it works out. So I didn't want to add too much to my box, but I did want to add a little something on the focal point on the front. So I just picked this piece of lace that I had in my stash, and I'm changing the color of it using some of the acrylic and just some water. And you can see I just dabbed it on. I'm going to add some blue now, and it's just a little bit of water with the paint. Next, I played with the transfers a little bit, and they didn't quite work out the way that I wanted them to, and I think that it's because my surface was still too sticky with the paint. So I changed up what I was going to do with that and just used the clock as an accent on the front. I did add some Impasto paint into my cover because the jade color was honestly a perfect match, and I didn't like that brown being plain like that. And I wanted it to be a matte surface because I'm going to alter that later on. So you can see just a quick coat of the Jade Impasto. And now I'm going to continue to add color on the inside pockets. Again, just using the credit card to make a thin coat of paint. Repeating the process. Trying to keep it off my Impasto paint. And now I'm going to alter my ribbon. So for my ribbon, I'm just making sure that it's wet, and then I'm mixing in a couple dabs of the acrylic paints, just the mix. It does wind up just being kind of like a green color because I added a little too much water. I probably should have stopped like right now. But it does turn out to be a pretty color, as you can see here after it was dried. And now I'm going to take the StazOn ink and the stamp set, and I'm going to randomly stamp around the ribbon, and it just kind of grunges it up just a little bit more and adds a little something to the ribbon. A little bit of random stamping around my cover, some inspirational words, and now I'm taking a little bit of the paint and filling in the title of my cover. And you can see I'm just blending that in and wiping it off to keep the metallic, but to fill in the crevice of the words. Adding a little bit of ribbon. I'm going to tie that into a bow. Place it on the lace, and I do add a tiny. And you can see the AB Studio transfer that I placed back there as an extra accent. I'm adding just a couple touches of white gesso, just a little bit, dry brushing just a very tiny bit, and mainly the splatters. And then I'm going to add that to the back as well. And I'm just using some watered down white gesso for that. Now here's why I wanted the inside covers to be a flat and not a glossy finish, because I wanted to stamp on top of it and I wanted them to really stand out. So I'm going to use the butterfly and a couple gears and then some inspirational quotes, and I repeat this process on the back as well. Just random stamping, nothing too fancy, just something to add in there. And really that's going to pretty much wrap up this album. I had a great time creating it. It was really a fun process and I really wasn't sure what to do, so it was a wonderful challenge for me. I do greatly appreciate the backs, and I hope that you liked my process. Please consider giving this video a thumbs up, and if you haven't subscribed already, I would greatly appreciate you to be a subscriber. Here's the flip through, and I hope you take a good look. You have a wonderful day, and thank you so much for joining me.